Sorry about that. Those of you who are watching before, well, I should say, hello, Dr. Jimmy. This is the 11th video in my series on the history of the event Universal Orlando Halloween Horror Nights 24, which was held at Universal Studios Florida in the year 2014. It is still February 17th, and in my previous video, part 10, I had to abruptly stop when dogs started barking mysteriously. Roof, roof, roof. What was that? It's a dial tone, and that particular dial tone tells me someone very important is calling me on my phone. A phone call I must answer, and therefore I had to stop the video to talk to somebody. As a result, I was not able to complete what I was talking about in that video, and so now I have to continue with an 11th video. I might have actually finished the whole thing in part 10, but we'll never know. Anyway, this is part 11, and I was talking about something ridiculous called the compound, which I did not participate in, and I know very little about it. I'm sorry. I usually know all about everything to do with Horror Nights, but in this case, I can't tell you very much about the compound because I didn't have anything to do with it. There was another game that year. We weren't sure it was even going to happen when the compound started. Some people thought that was Legendary Truth. But then we were told by one of the masters that no, it has nothing to do with A&D, has nothing to do with the people who'd put on Legendary Truth. It was all done by people on the social media team who really had no idea about Horror Nights except just to do something to get people involved through Facebook and Twitter and that sort of thing. So, didn't pay much attention to that, but Legendary Truth did happen, but not until the very last week of the event. And the very last week of the event. And unfortunately, because it didn't happen until the very last week of the event, I missed most of Legendary Truth as well, although I've heard what happened, and I can give, I hope, a reasonably accurate account of what happened at the Legendary Truth games that year. You see, earlier that year, I went to Portugal. It was sometime in the middle of the event, but I came back. But apparently, whilst I was travelling in Europe, I contracted what I thought was a nasty cold. And the night that I went was the very first night of Legendary Truth, which also happened the last night I would attend Horror Nights 24 that year. I realised before the evening was done that I had a rather nasty cold. And because I had a rather nasty cold, I didn't come back the next night, and it turned out to be a hellacious thing, like a horrible flu. I wasn't able to go to any other nights of the event at all. I was just in bed miserable, and it turned out to be more than just a nasty cold. It was the freaking whooping cough. Oh, so for a month I was horrible coughing, and then even after the cold symptoms went away, the flu-like symptoms went away, it was cough, cough, cough for about 100 days after that. It's terrible. Terrible. Oh. One of the worst things I ever had to go through was that. But I was very glad. Apparently, even if you've been vaccinated as a child, you need to get vaccinated every 20 years. I didn't know that. Well, now that I've had it as an adult, I won't have it again for another 20 years. But you know, if I'm alive in my 70s, I should go get a vaccine just because it would be even worse to hit me at that age. Oh. Anyway. But word to the wise, if you were vaccinated as a kid and it's been 25 years since then, you might want to go get the vaccine again because it could hit you again, and it's awful. And it's terrible for adults, but it's deadly for children. So if you're around kids especially, you don't want them to get the whooping cough, so don't, protect yourself and any kids you might come in contact with. Personally, I'm never around any kids ever. Don't ever meet any children, so I have no reason to worry about that, and the whole time I was contagious, I was home in bed, so no worries. At any rate, legendary truth, first of all, there was an app. You see right there, it says test, T-E-S-T, and it stands for something. It stands for Tactical Evaluation of Spectrum Terrors. See, like this. Now, unfortunately, after I used it the first night, people had issues with this app, especially those who had Androids. I have an iPhone and mine worked pretty well, but even that had a few bugs. So after the first night, they suggested everybody reload. Now, when you walked around the event that first night, so I did, but since I never went back, it's all blank now. But the first night, you see it's got Spectrum, Achievements, Directives, Communications. And you've got all kinds of communications, and the only one I have is New Recruit, Perimeter, Accessed, and not much else here. Except there's some stuff on here that's rather weird, because some of these things were still around later when I was walking around the event, and I got seals and things that I shouldn't have, because this was from 2015, because some of those signals were still in the park apparently, which was amusing. But the idea was, on the opening night, whenever you're in the park, these communicators would come up on your app, and they would give you directives where you should go. And it was like, if you're in a particular scare zone, it would tell you that the scare zone was Bacanoid or Morphin, or it was connected to a Legion. And some of the scare actors were high or low. Like, for example, the Masquerade on Stitch was a Morphin scare zone, and there were high and low Morphins. What does that mean? Does it mean the ones on stilts and the ones off? Maybe. But if you got close to a high Morphin, you'd get points. If you got close to a low Morphin, you'd lose points. So you have to be careful. So you had to be careful doing that. But you're supposed to visit all the scare zones, and you're supposed to go to the haunted houses, the ones that were associated. AVP, for example, was a Mashorian house, and you got these little seals. You're supposed to go to specific areas, and then you would get seals. This was a Bacanoid seal, for example. But once you got all the seals, let's see. How did you go back to the front? Oh yes, achievements. You would see this thing here. All the different things would show up here. Now they're all. It looks like it says. I'm sorry. It's SSA, but because when I make this video, I see a reflected image. You seeing it correctly, but a reflected image says ass, and that makes me laugh. But Spectrum Seal achievements and the Legion Touchstone. So if you got all of these, then you would get the Legion Touchstone. So for the 6 Legions, and these are all different insignias for the different. For example, there's one that's like a little baby doll. That's from Dollhouse of the Damned. You see that. You see the Purge, the Flying Saucer. I'm not sure what that's supposed to be. Is that AVP? No, there's an alien egg. That must be AVP. There's a clown and some gears. That's for the some vampire bats. Is for Dracula Untold. You know, all quite interesting, but they're all for the different scare zones and haunted houses. And you get the Legion Touchstones by going to certain areas where you could get them, and once you got all of them, you might get the Master Seal. Now, I was not able to get all the touchstones because one of the areas where you got a Legion Touchstone was by the Quickie Mart, and I couldn't ever get it to work. And I didn't bother coming back the next night because I was too sick. But at least one person, I think only one person, got the Master Seal, but they didn't let them go play any further that night. It was only the first test night. But was told, okay, you got the Master Seal. I think it was Diego. After that, the second night, people did the same sort of things. And then there were clues. By the way, there were clues found the first night too, that helped you find those. After you got all of those other things, the first batch, those Legion seals were got when you went to. You were directed to go to Sting Alley, and there was a poster in Sting Alley that had clues on it. Every night it was a different poster, and the clues got harder. And it would tell you where you would have to go to get those master seals, to get those seals. All right? So that became more complicated. But once you got it all, and it turns out you didn't have to follow any particular order, as long as you got it all by a certain point. In the evening, then you'd be able to go to a special location with the master seal, and you could present the master seal to a location in New York Street, where you were let in those rooms, those supplemental rooms for the Mummy's Revenge Ride, where last year they had a gift shop in there. Remember, there was a gift shop, and those rooms were used for a special interactive adventure for Legendary Truth. Now, so this was highly confidential that year, but after a while they let people talk about it, and they even let people show videos on YouTube. So you can go to YouTube, where you're watching this now, and you can see videos of what happened. And basically what they did was a sort of seance thing. They had a room with a great big table where they had all the Legion symbols on it, and they communicated with the dead. And the spirit that appeared, and you could actually see the spirit through a sort of tablet, like a smart tablet. And the spirit would appear and would manifest, and things would move in the room, and it was rather amazing. And there was a ghost that appeared in the room of a spirit called Red Alewife. A man named Alewife who was nicknamed Red. Of course, an alewife is a type of herring. Ooh. And apparently this was not really an old sailor who was a friend of the notorious lazy bastard, but was in fact a demon from hell pretending to be Alewife. At least that's what was interpreted by many of those who participated. And he gave some strange advice, and then the device seemed to break, and the tablet shattered, or at least appeared to shatter. And so you were allowed to look around to see, and in one of the corridors, it got rather creepy and scary, where through the tablets you could see what you couldn't see with the naked eye, that there was a demonic presence, and you would see like hoof prints and handprints on the walls as something was moving through the room, coming closer to you. So it was rather creepy and scary seance sort of thing, where you discovered some clues. But that's really as far as it got. Some sort of demonic presence and some sort of evil within hinted at that year. And it was mainly to test the app for the phone, which they might use later, or for the park for other things, and also to test some of the technology with the tablets and other items they used inside that sort of presentation, which some people called maybe an extra house, but it was more like a little interactive show, sort of a precursor to what ultimately became the repository last year. They were testing the sort of stuff they might use there, but it hadn't quite got to the next level, which was virtual reality. They didn't quite go there, but they were testing some of the technology that would later be utilized. So that's what Legendary Truth was all about in 2014. And I'm sorry I missed a lot of it. I'm sure it would have been quite exciting. I only had the opening night, and I never got past getting those Legion seals on my phone. It was about all I was able to do. So that nearly wraps up all of the event. So what's next? Merchandising, because that pays for everything. Yes, and so you see some of the merchandise here in the brochure. Indeed, we see here they sold a Walking Dead baseball cap and shot glass and iPhone cover, and they had a mug, all themed to The Walking Dead. They had a glass, a taller glass that said Fright Club, which was one of the logos they used. And they had lanyards and many t-shirts. They had a kid's shirt that said Zombie Brat. You see, a little kid's tank top. But the t-shirts were quite nice. They had a whole bunch of t-shirts that year. They had two separate Walking Dead themed t-shirts. One just The Walking Dead with the burnt zombies, and one that was Terminus, those who arrive survive. They had an American Werewolf in London shirt, which was quite amazing. Because sometimes, I think they share the shirts with Hollywood, a lot of them, and so they make shirts they can sell at both parks. So the American Werewolf shirt was kind of silly, because there was an American Werewolf haunted house at Halloween Horror Nights 2013. There was an American Werewolf house at Halloween Horror Nights in Orlando in 2015. 2014 was the year there wasn't one, and that was the year they sold the American Werewolf shirt in Orlando, because it was the same shirt they sold in Hollywood for Halloween Horror Nights 2014 in Hollywood, because they had the maze there that year, you see. So it was, that's why it was there. There was a Halloween-themed t-shirt for the Halloween Haunted House. There was an Alien vs. Predator t-shirt. And there was a Chucky t-shirt. A Chucky t-shirt? Chucky Friends to the End had nothing to do with, there was no Chucky house in 2014 in Orlando. I believe there might have been a Chucky terror tram or something in Hollywood. I don't remember. I know they had one recently. It might have been the year they did it, but I don't remember. But Chucky was in a maze. Not a maze. Chucky appeared in the haunted house, Dollhouse of the Damned, just a door in the house. So he did make a cameo appearance in that way, so I guess the shirt fit in there. And then there was the Fright Club t-shirt with some generic zombies with Fright Club. And of course, there were pins, the wonderful little pins. I didn't bring them out. Let's see if I can find them, if you allow me a moment. Oh. All right, to collect my big box and tray of pins. Yes, I have a whole array. This is the, I have it over there on a shelf. This is where I keep all the pins and things I've acquired over the years, and there's lots of them. Let's see, which ones were from 24? Let's see, those are from different years. And let's see, that's from 21. From 25. What's this? There's some sort of Walking Dead cards. That wasn't from Horror Nights. I don't know what that's. Let's see if I can find them. These are all. No, none of those were right. Sorry about that. Don't want to take up too much time. Let's see. This was. Here's one. A Walking Dead pin. Universal's Halloween Horror Nights 24. There it is. That's one of the pins. Very nice one. So it's got the hanging thing. I think it might light up. I'm not sure. Some of them lit up. I'm not sure if that lights up. The eyes light up, maybe. I'm not certain. Maybe not. Alright, let's see. Mardi Gras pins. Let's see, what else was here? Something else from 24. Here's an annual pass holder pin. Annual pass holder pin from 2014. That might be it for the pins that were sold, the regular pins. But they also were a couple of other pins that I want to show you. So they did have an annual pass holder pin that year, along with the Walking Dead zombie pin that I just showed you. And there were two other pins, but those pins were associated with the vinyls. So if you give me a moment, go back across the room and bring the vinyls. Once again, there are special vinyl figurines, Uni-Minis. Uni-Minis, and the first one was the main Uni-Mini for the event. Yes, I said Halloween Horror Nights, and the Uni-Mini was a zombie girl. She sort of resembles Teddy Bear Girl from The Walking Dead, except she's not a blonde. She does have a teddy bear. Oh, is that HHN Bear? Oh no, HHN Bear is in the clutches of a zombie girl. Yes, and she's all bloody and gory. And yes, I took her out of her box, but if you didn't take her out of her box, you couldn't see her exposed brains or the slash marks on her. Yes, little zombie girl with earrings too. And that didn't sell so well, I'm afraid. The other figure they sold the same year, the Uni-Mini, was Chucky. Along with the Chucky shirt, they had this. He says "Good Guys" on his front there, and we see his little knife in his little shoes, and on the back you can see the straps of his little good guy overalls. So quite lovely little Chucky, little ginger bastard. And to go with them, pins, yes, the collector pins to go with them. Here's this one for the zombie girl. It says "Infected." It's the same, only she doesn't have the bear, and she has a ribbon in her hair that we don't have on the vinyl. Isn't that strange? But this was the pin that accompanied her, and here's a pin for Chucky. Right, so these were the lovely collecting items for the event of Halloween Horror Nights 24. And I think that about does it. I've covered Halloween Horror Nights 24 now with only 11 videos. So next time I shall start in on that magnificent event, the 25th anniversary of Horror Nights in Orlando, the event known as Universal Orlando Halloween Horror Nights 25. That's all they called it. They could have said something about Carnage Returns, but that wasn't the name of the event. The event was just Halloween Horror Nights 25. But it was a spectacular 25th anniversary event at Universal Studios Florida, which upped the ante in many ways. Yes, up your ante and up your uncle too. No, yes, and return of Jack the Clown and Chance and so much more. A wonderful, magnificent event, one of my favorites, except for The Walking Dead came back. And probably the worst Walking Dead house was that year, unfortunately, of all the Walking Dead houses. But nevertheless, Halloween Horror Nights 25, I shall begin covering that sometime in the near future. Until then, this is Dr. Jimmy signing off, probably for the rest of the day, and enjoy the rest of your weekend. And you might go to Mardi Gras and have a good time and catch some beads and see some hot boys and girls doing a parade for you and some musical acts this weekend. If you go to the parks, have a good time, enjoy yourselves, don't party too hard, and someday I'll come back to do more history. I've only got 2 years left in history because Halloween Horror Nights 27 isn't history yet. It hasn't even happened. So there we go. So until then, I'm signing off and be seeing you later.